Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I hope you had, because you'll probably listen to this tomorrow, I hope you had a restful day and relived some of the stuff that he actually said that really mattered. Unlike what the radical left likes to say, Martin Luther King Jr. always wanted us to see people for the content of their character, not the actual color that they wore. I think we were headed down that path a while back, before politics and social media and before people went nuts. So, what do I got for you tonight? There's a couple things that I think is interesting. The TSA, so that's the transportation safety people for airlines. These people have said that they've had a record number of guns that they've ran into this year. Now, it's kind of coincidental that if you think about what's been going on in the last couple of years where people are actually, as I say, strapping up, they're arming themselves because they know they're their own first responders, because they've seen what's been going on in big cities, that they would naturally be more people carrying guns. And thus, doing this in a daily fashion, I can imagine them forgetting that they have said gun on them and realizing that, oh yeah, you cannot have that in an airport. There's a law there, a big one, and that they are going to have checks that make sure you do not have guns on airplanes. And that's because untrained people with guns on airplanes, I am actually against. I am for you carrying a gun in most places. An airplane is where if you poke a hole in the wrong place, you're going to cause a large issue for a lot of people that had no clue what the hell was going on. That's why air marshals use special ammunition, have special training. That's kind of the training I think you should have if you're in schools. Again, I'm not against you having your right to carry, and I think you should have the right to carry, and I actually think you probably would do more to stop a threat than not having said weapon. That being said, it goes hand in glove. If more people are arming up, and it's because of what we've seen in larger cities, and something that was brought up to my attention, which is obvious, but I never really cared to vocalize it, is that in these large Democrat strongholds, these big sanctuary cities, where there seems to be these huge problems of crime, it's because of policy, and that people there have gotten fed up with policy and have started arming themselves up. There's nationally, what has happened is that the courts have found, and I don't remember which district court, and it really doesn't matter, said that post offices aren't sensitive places. So again, time and time again, we're seeing that the court's siding with us on this sensitive places bullcrap, or these safe spaces bullcrap, that they're not going to let you not rule against us. It's just going to take time. There was another article I saw which was kind of interesting that was along the same lines, is that analysis of the Uvalde shooting reinforces need for fast action and less permission seeking. If you think about the Uvalde shooting, and you think about, the shooting I personally had to deal with, where seconds count, you don't have a chance to think. You need to be reacting right there. This is where your OODA loop response, your threat matrix needs to be at its top of its game, and the only way you get there is by training. That's why I consistently say stay strapped or get clapped. I mean it, because if you live in places like I do, I live in rural northwest New Mexico, where the average response time could be 5 minutes to an hour. And it really depends on how many things that are happening in the area at the time. It's not that law enforcement won't eventually get to you. It's they have a limited amount of law enforcement agents at any given time. And there is a vast geography they have to traverse to get to you. And a lot can happen in those short seconds and time frames that you have that you need to be able to react to and take care of. I just heard of, I was listening to the scanner before I jumped on here, and there was a wreck at two people had a head-on at a gas station here. What always comes to mind with myself is what would I do in those situations? Why? Because I'm game planning what I would do in those situations. Meaning that if I was one of the guys that got in the wreck, or if I was one of the people that was on the outside of all this, how I would respond to helping the people out, or if I could help the people out. There's a time and place where you need to realize being a good witness is more important than actually interceding and changing the event. Where I draw the line is usually if I have to draw a gun, that means that there's already rounds in play, and this is a two-way range, or there's about to be rounds in play, and I'm going to stop that many rounds flying because I'm going to intercede and stop them by taking out one of the threats, or if not all of the threats, rather than becoming the threat and becoming the target. Or if someone's bleeding out, one of the things I did extensively after my experiences is I started getting medical training. I carry my little ouch pouch around my ankle everywhere I go, and it gets mistaken for holsters sometimes, and I've had security dudes approach me and say, "Hey, are you carrying a gun on you?" And I'm like, in this particular case, no, I'm not. What you actually see, and I show them, and they're like, "Oh, well, thank God you have something like that. I wish more people would do that." Sometimes when I wear my boots, because the weather here is getting, or has been, kind of intolerable for an older gentleman like myself. I say older. I'm 46, and I realize after years of spending hunting in the cold, playing in the snow, that parts of me are becoming more arthritic. My hands specifically and my knees. And I don't like the cold as much as I once did. I mean, this used to be one of my favorite times of year. So I stay out of the cold lately. And it makes me think about those situations, when you're driving to work in this condition, when there's ice and snow on the roads. There's a lot of idiots that don't pay attention to what they're doing, and they skid off the road and cause an accident. Some of them, most of them, thankfully, are minor. But what happens when it becomes more of a thing? Are you able to render aid or help someone? Because that's what the hell I would want and that's how I operate, is what the hell would I want if I was in that situation? There's a lot of times we all need help and we don't reach out. I've been through that recently in this last season of my life where I tried to start a business that failed. I'm still catching up on my bills, having been out of work basically for 2 months, and then really buckling down and getting a good job and going forward. But it makes me think about those times where you need help, where, like Sonny Pazikis says, when seconds count and help's just minutes away, what do you do? And I've talked to many law enforcement agents here in the area, and I've talked to many first responders for fire and for EMS. And what they always say is have the training to do something to help someone right away. Because if you can intercede in that golden moment and help them out, they're likely to survive. Because when they get there, if that golden moment has expired, they don't have the resources to bring someone back from the edge. So you could quite literally be saving someone's life. And I feel much better in my conscience and in my soul if I did everything I could for everyone around me. I know a lot of people won't do that for myself. And I am way past worshiping the soil or being loyal to the soil that people used to walk on. But I am still one of those people that considers myself a sheepdog. That's something my dad always said. I know that's a boomer thing to say. But I honestly think that's how a lot of us in society are. Is that, we may not always agree with society. We may not always agree with the people in it and what they do. But when rubber meets the road and we actually need to put things into action to help you in certain situations, we're going to do it. I'm not going to check and see who you voted for if there's some idiot coming to shoot up a place and I have the means to stop them. If that costs me my life, my family would be affected by that, but they know I did what I could, and I would be tearing myself apart if I didn't. And that's something I've had to live with, thinking about this is like, what are you going to do? What are your actions going to be? It isn't just the fact that you get training or that you carry a gun because a lot of people will carry a gun and not have any clue what to do with it in reality. You know, there's a difference between concealment and cover. You know, is there concealment is where a bullet can still come through whatever the hell you're hiding behind. Cover is actually going to stop the bullet from going through it. Knowing the difference can save your life in situations that you get into or that could happen. You know, there's a lot of things that are in play in this world, and the world's not owing anybody anything. And the best way you can do, best thing you can do for yourself and for society is be prepared. You know, the Boy Scouts say that all the time, but they actually are correct in every regard. Every time you're not prepared, you're going to get smacked. You know, there's things you need to think about the whole process of what you're going to do. You know, what happens after one of these events. And I can tell you there's going to be an investigation, and if you're one of those people that actually pull the trigger, you're probably going to jail for a little bit. And you better have some insurance, because it's going to get costly. Now, if it's justified, more often than not, you're going to get off. Depends on where you're at. I say that because there's a lot of places, Washington State, D.C., New York, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. But where I live, there's justifiable homicides in New Mexico to the tune of 16 last year, that in just in Albuquerque, that were found 100% justified. What does that mean? I mean, you're seeing this more and more often. You know, I watched an interview today, an hour and a half long interview with the founder of Palmetto State Armory, and he echoed a lot of the same things that I've always known, and a lot of things I've seen him espouse upon before. I just think it's amazing. If you listen to the story of how Palmetto State Armory came around and what their core mission is to keep America free and to flood the zone, so to speak, with enough of the 2A goodies that they can't take them away. Because this gentleman that started the company has been deployed to other places, and he's seen what happens in other places in the world when things go sideways. And the best fight against that is to make sure everybody can prevent those things from going the way that they do in other countries. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the news. Again, I say this all the time. You turn on the news and it seems like the world's on fire. Well, that's because the United States has taken our crayons and went home. You know, 20 plus years of war that didn't really have a benefit to the American people. We've lost the appetite for war. So as we've bombed people in the Strait of Hormuz, I think is where it is now. It's close to Iran. The reason why we do that is because it's disrupting global trade. And global trade is something we have to rely on for our home country. Will it get more hot? Who knows? Depends on how decisively we deal with the enemy that we're having to fight there. It also depends on what the enemy's backers do. Because it isn't just some dudes in flip-flops this time. It's some dudes that actually have been trying to start up some stuff in the Middle East for a long time. And I'm talking about Iran. And there's something to be said about respecting the hell out of the dog that can bite you. And Iran can do that. I don't think they can strike the homeland, but they can definitely fund terrorists who can. And with our border being as porous as it is, it doesn't take a huge leap in imagination to think that someone here could do something really undesirable and no one would catch them, and we would be like Ray Charles on the Louvre until it happened. We wouldn't know what happened until it happened. And that's pretty disturbing. But when I watch all this stuff on the news, I look at it and I'm like, you know, this really is something that are gravity issues. There's nothing we can do about it as individuals. You can vote. How you vote does matter. It doesn't seem like it sometimes, but it does. What you're seeing today was the Iowa caucus, so long story short, excuse me, Trump won. That's what it looks like by all measures. So this was a Republican caucus that was happening in Iowa and was freezing everywhere. But it looks like Trump won handily, followed by DeSantis, followed by Nikki Haley, followed by Vivek Ramaswamy. We all know this. The election isn't really contingent on the right side of the aisle, so to speak. I think Trump's going to win the nomination hands down. I have some reservations about him winning the election, more so because there's a lot of people that are on the law and order side of the House that if he's convicted in any way, they'll abandon him. There's a lot of people that will choose anyone but Trump just because they have enough hate for the man. There's a lot of independents that feel that way, but there's a lot of bad that's happened in the world economically and in general that I can see a lot of people just going ahead and voting, holding their nose and voting for Trump. You know, you watch some of these election people, Peter Zehan, who I've stated on here before, he seems very positive that Trump cannot win. And I disagree with him by his own argument. And what I mean by that is there's a point where people get in the economic spectrum that they will vote against their own ideals to fix something. And I think that's where we're at. You're seeing the corruption on every level, at the government level. And someone outside of the system, someone who's not part of that swamp, so to speak, needs to come to head. If I had my way, it would be a libertarian, but that's not a thing with our two-party system in the current state that the government's in right now. But one of the things that was found in the courts when it came to the AR-15 stuff is that guns are in more, and I've said this before, are used more or in more ownership. There's more ownership of firearms in America. And it's showing in the statistics time and time again. You know, there's an economic magazine that came out with this article. And what they were trying to say is that gun bans are not an issue that you're going to win elections on this year. You're going to try. But because of the holistic failures you've had, where you're seeing the breakdown in policy at the city level in large cities, that people aren't stupid. They see it, and they're going to vote accordingly. It takes a lot for Americans to finally get off the couch and move and do something. They're too busy watching the Cowboys lose. And by the way, HTTR, hail to the Redskins. I feel bad for all my Cowboys friends, my pastor even. They all look like they were, going to be happy, except for we all know historically the Cowboys suck and choke in this playoff season, in any playoff season. Since Troy Aikman, they suck and choke. So, but it's an interesting thing that people will tune into, watch a TV show, or they'll watch a game or play a game, but they won't look at the current events that are happening in the world. It's sad, but I think we're still winning. And, the CEO of Palmetto State Armory agrees with me. It's just going to take time and effort. The American people aren't stupid. And, we can be fooled for so long, and they've done it. And now people are waking up. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.